I like reading what you lot call weirdy books.
Marry books, we actually call them.
Marry books, and the tales of the
ludicrous
different aspects of the paranormal. And there were a book written, and it were advertised, and it was called The Green Stone. And actually, I've just read it again just this last week.
Give us a brief synopsis, just to.
Well, it's about a group of people round about Midlands, Wolverhampton way in England, and it started off with a little girl called Gaynor Sunderland had a UFO experience, right? This were documented. I think Jenny Randalls did express an interest in this particular tale at the time. And then these two lads, they formed a organisation called Parasearch. And so they went out, obviously, to investigate the Gaynor Sunderland UFO. She's on a bike going down a lane, and she's seen this UFO come down in a field and flew home, and then she's having psychic experiences. So all of a sudden, a group of people who didn't really know one another were getting psychic messages about something were going to happen, and they had to do this battle between good and evil, and quite a good yarn, and I don't know that it's true. They maintain it is, but and of course, who wrote the foreword? Jenny Randalls. And she expresses that this is a true story. Not this could be. This is a true story. And then she'll like, that's a few years ago, she'll do that, and then she'll just diss.
I just want to bring Martin in on that. I mean, to the neutral listener, to someone listening to that now, who just happens to have stumbled across that, or someone just idly listening to this podcast, you could be forgiven for thinking that sounds like a right lot of old twaddle.
Yeah.
Couldn't you? I mean, you've not really sold it. If you, Martin, you're the open-minded, leaning on the side of prove it to me. What's your view on a tale like that? The little girl sees a UFO, which leads to this great quest that draws people together. Sounds a bit far-fetched, doesn't it?
Well, they were getting messages. I'll just let you know before you give you a bit more on it. They had to go. Plus the fact, I'm not saying I believe this story. I'm just, I like to read a good yarn.
What's your point of view, then? Could there be any truth in it? On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is its bollocks and 10 is its gospel.
Well, it's right hard to put a shine on it, really, because.
Now, come on, expert.
Yeah, no. People can have psychic messages. I'm not saying they can't. People can have psychic experiences. All I'm saying is, when somebody puts a tale together and incorporates all these things, I don't know that this tale, just because they say this happened, I can't say one way or the other that it definitely has. I can just read it. Hugely enjoyable.
Do you? What's they're saying it's true. Jenny Randall said it's true. Do you believe there's any truth in it at all?
I think they may. I think they may have had 1 or 2 experiences, but it's like Amityville Horror. I think they could have sat there together. I'm not saying they have, but they could have sat there together and put a fantastic tale together.
Horror writers have been doing it.
Yeah.
Centuries.
True.
On the other hand, it could be true. Nobody knows for sure, because if somebody tells you something, are they telling truth or are they telling lies?
You realise you all get splinters up your arse sitting on that fence, don't you?
I'm not sitting on the fence. What I'm saying is, if I said to you,
good luck with the tweezers.
If I said to you, well, last night I dreamt that I needed to find this small dagger, and it's buried somewhere, and it's something to do with gunpowder plot people, and it's buried somewhere, and we need to find it, and we're going to get more messages about this. And while we were talking about it, Martin fell into a deep trance, and somebody spoke through him, and it was a woman. And we asked her who she were while he were unconscious, and she said, "I am she that is with you, and give you half messages, so you're to work this out."
I'll have to say, I'm supposed to be the moderator and not take sides, but if that were to happen to most ordinary average people, they wouldn't know how to stop. You wouldn't think, oh, they've lapsed into a trance and now someone's talking through and let's get information. You'd be slapping them about and thinking they weren't so well.
Thinking
perhaps.
you needed to get an ambulance.
Absolutely,
you know.
Wouldn't you? You know?
Well, this is how it is, and they're doing all this, and then all of a sudden they go from that to the dead of night in winter, and they know that they're facing people that deal with black magic and these weary organisations, and they're hunting for this particular dagger and this particular green stone. So off they go, half a dozen of them, and they go into the countryside at the dead of night. They're tramping through fields, round ancient stone circles and over to a bridge. They're digging, they fight, they're working out, or it's a convoluted
obviously,
tale. But the figure 9 comes into it. So they go to this ancient bridge and they count 9 stones, and they stood in the water among the rotting vegetation, and they work one of these big stones loose in this bridge and pull it out and stick their arm in and find a short dagger. Now, it can be argued, would you do that at dead of night in a place you don't know?
I've got to do it, and that's your summer holiday. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if you tell me that tale, it's not that I'm sitting on fence. All I'm saying is, if you tell me you've done that, how do I know you're not just making this up? Or how do I know you're telling the truth?
Well,
what do we think?
I'd just like to ask. I mean, I've never read the book in question,
Right.
Ringstone. I've heard you talk about
Yep.
it. I've heard much that's been said about it.
It's a good yarn.
Yep,
It is.
yarn, exactly. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like a ripping yarn. When was it actually written?
Oh, it's 20 years ago. In fact, I think it may be out of print. But strangely enough, on the back of the book it says, if you only read one book, read this one. And if you read 2 books in your life, read this one twice.
Or read this one and the obligatory follow-up.
The
the
sequel brings me to that. There was a follow-up.
I can't help but think we'll save this for another time, 'cause I think we're deviating away from the topic
Right.
now, which is of course.
Well, it
aliens.
is connected with aliens, because they were saying that aliens weren't actually aliens from another planet. They were saying it were people, your ancient figures from history. And they were coming as aliens to gain Sunderland.
Wow.
So it started off with
so it started off with
extraterrestrial story.
I think it kind of bends away from what we're doing, and we are in the Paranormal Blackburn podcast. Good evening or morning, whatever time it is when you listen to this to you. Don't forget, you can join in. You can let us know what you think on anything that we spoke about at madeinblackburn@yahoo.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. Any thoughts, questions, comments, stories, whether you think what we're saying is right, wrong or whatever, madeinblackburn@yahoo.co.uk.